Self-regulated learning has a long lineage in research and practice. There's kind of three different kind of origins in terms of how I engage in the work. One really comes from what we probably were calling for about 25 years, study skills. So supporting students to develop as strategic learners, to say what needs to happen here, and what do I need to do here, and what resources or strategies might I need, trying something out, stopping and saying how's it going, and then adjusting what you're doing based on what you're noticing, mostly because central to self-regulated learning is task interpretation. And so like, what do I need to do here? And then what goals do I set? So if you're working with interpreting, then you're checking what you're doing and adjusting what you're doing by coming back and self-assessing and noticing what's happening, and either adjusting your goals or adjusting what you're doing to meet those goals, or setting new goals.
What happens next?
Self-regulated learning refers to the individual's capacity to manage and productively work with their emotions, their thoughts, and their actions. And so it really is about the locus of control being within the individual. And one of the most important things I've worked on in my practice and my research and my teaching is making sure that I'm not getting kids to do what I want them to do. And so I'm other regulating them, but supporting them to say, what's required of this, and what do I want to work on, and what can I develop? And so self-regulated learning involves developing your own strategies, developing your own capacity. My colleague Nancy Perry likes to describe 3 domains. Emotions and motivation are part of self-regulation in terms of what we do and how we do it. Metacognition, how am I learning, noticing what I'm doing, what's making sense, and then taking strategic action. And so motivation and emotions, metacognition, and strategic action together are what self-regulating learners are doing and navigating. And those 3 domains are intersecting, and they're not really separate from each other. And so we always have to think about, whoa, my emotions are quite high right now. And so I need to work with that to be able to be strategic. And I need to notice how it's going so I can work with that. So it's not bad to have emotion. It's saying, what can I do with this emotion? And so when we think about self-regulated learning in the classroom, it's really giving kids opportunities to make decisions and choices and to support their understanding or their sense-making using evidence and resources. It's really about empowering kids and supporting them to say, what do I need to do here? And how would I do that? And why am I doing that? Or what's the possibility here? Or even better is, how can I propose how I'm going to share my learning about this thing that we're investigating? And so when we give kids choices and opportunities for voice to communicate their thinking, we're really aligning ourselves with self-regulated learning pedagogy, which is helping kids make decisions, not just about what they're learning, and not just how they're learning, but how they're sharing their learning. And when we do that, then kids are self-regulating all that they're doing. What can I take from this? How can I use this? And how can I communicate this? Over the last approximately 10 years, colleagues from around the world who are SRL researchers like myself, we have been looking at synergies between formative assessment and self-regulated learning. And so looking at foundational research related to formative assessment, we've now been looking at how those approaches support students in self-regulating their learning. And so those practices include designing and posting and working with learning intentions. They involve setting and using criteria with students. They involve peer and self-assessment. They include students generating their own questions and coming back to their own questions. They include ownership, where students have an ownership of what they're assessing, how they're being assessed, what they're doing. And finally, we pull those together in practices like designing single column rubrics, working with learning continuums, or one of my favorite foundational practices is creating an anchor chart with students for a routine or a practice that we're going to engage in again and again, so that we can have a visual reference around the thing that we've created the criteria for, that's a practice or a flow that we can come back to use to help us engage in our learning, where someone else doesn't need to tell you what to do. You've already been part of creating that thing that we're doing that's posted for everyone.